Hey everybody, Quantum here, taking some of your feedback from the comment sections of my last video where you requested that I do some voiceover commentary of these matches. So we have Sapphire Steel on my side going up against my opponent using Sapphire Ruby. Just for context, I'm trying to convince my friend on the other side here to start his own YouTube channel. He is a very good player. He's, I think, cracked the top 25 of the Pixelborn leaderboard in hardcore mode when that was around. He's won, those Michi Monday tournaments, which have a lot of top players. You know, the Rat, the guy who just won the most recent Lorcana challenge in Chicago, participates in those as well. So he's a good player. He does mainly play red-purple, so he's trying to branch out and explore some other things. And you guys have pointed out some, mistakes and misplays, which is bound to happen since we're all very used to playing on Pixelborn, where a lot of things were automated for us. But this is why in-person testing is important if you're preparing for set championships. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and start commentating the match. To start off, we have a little bit of a slower start, and this is game 2 from a best of 2 series, basically what we were playing. I won the die roll, went first last game, and was able to clutch that out with a pretty crazy win at the end. If you haven't seen that video, make sure you go check that out. But we have a lot of items, but no actual ramp until we get the fishbone on turn 3, so I'm looking pretty good. I've got my items stacked up, and I'm able to ramp with fishbone. If I have a whole new world as well, then I'm just really in business. Off of the fishbone quill inking, I'm able to play yet another Fortisphere, and I'm up to a total of 5 items. And I've talked about this in my deck profile, and I will do an updated one to explain Sapphire Steel in person, but why I think this is a really top tier deck and kind of the advantage that you may see over something like Sapphire Ruby, at least right now, and why this matchup is improved. As you can see here, my opponent is really depending on the Hiram in order to draw. They have 3 cards in hand now after they played the Hiram, popping their item, but I'm on 5 items. I still have a decent hand. I have the option to Whole New World if I want to, or I can ink it with Fishbone and use my own Hiram engine to draw if I wanted to. But the addition of Fortisphere into the Sapphire Steel deck really provides you with a lot of benefits over something like Develop Your Brain, because yes, it's a sticky item that comes down on the board that replaces itself, but again, as you can see here, it's just another item for Hiram. I have 5 items, my opponent has 0 now. They have 3 cards in hand, and again, I'm hoping to get the hand cam soon, guys, so you can kind of see my hand and how many cards in my hand at all times. But the extra items make a huge difference. More fodder for Tamatoa, more items for Tamatoa to recur, and when you recur a Fortisphere or a Popsicle from the discard, that represents yet another draw. Whereas on the Sapphire Ruby side, the opponent only has Popsicles to recycle to draw off of their items. Still very strong. We know how strong that was from set 3's metagame, but you can see the difference it's making here right now. Now, my opponent is still able to ramp pretty aggressively here, and they're going to get up to 8 ink, and it's worth it for them to play the Sisu in order to out my Hiram, because they know that's one of my key draw engines right now. They have 2 cards left in hand, which is rather interesting, because you'd think that I would not want a Whole New World in this situation, and you'd probably be right, but again, it would really depend on where I'm at in the game as well, because one of the I don't know if you call it a deficiency, but I guess you could with Sapphire Steel, is that once this kind of game state occurs where you and your opponent are in the Sapphire mirror basically, and your opponent is on 8, 9, 10 plus ink, and you're also in that scenario, it becomes harder for you to out their board. Like, I need to see a Zeus or use my Tinkerbell or Tamatoa to out their big threats like the Sisu, the Maleficent Dragons, the Tamatoas, and the problem is all of those cards have enter the battlefield effects, right? Like the Sisu wipe my Hiram, the Maleficent Dragon will trade 1 for 1 or 2 for 1, right? The Tamatoa gets back an item. So the opponent is able to generate advantage off of their top end, whereas for me, it's less so the case. So while I have good options in the early and mid game with Steel, it's in the late game where I essentially have to race with this deck. And if you watch other top players use Sapphire Steel, that's what you're going to see the game plan essentially kind of be. Now, unfortunately, my opponent does get the dime down here, and this is going to be really critical for them, because whoever sees and establishes their dime first in this matchup does have a pretty significant advantage, and obviously being on the play has a decent sized role in having that come through to actually happening. But you can see that I haven't been able to deal with my opponent's Hiram here. I just haven't really drawn the threats that I've needed in order to out it, because a Zeus alone won't take it out. I have to throw something else into it. You saw me ink a Tinkerbell earlier, and maybe that was a misplay. Maybe I should have stuck the Tinkerbell on the field, but the problem with committing those kinds of things is, Tinkerbell has to come down, wait a turn before it can do anything because I'm not shifting it, and if the opponent does have the removal, Ice Block into Medusa, Maleficent Dragon, etc., then that's a wasted turn, right? So those are all things you have to kind of consider. So after playing out my hand a little bit, I think I ended up discarding a Grab Your Swords there. Yes, I give the opponent a fresh 7, but I get them to discard a Medusa and a Be Prepared, which is really good. But unfortunately, I had to sing the Whole New World with my Aerial. So again, you could argue that maybe not playing the Tamatoa there and seeing what I wheeled into would have been a little bit better. But I stuck this Tamatoa on board for the item recursion, and you can see here that my item buildup is quite high. The opponent does not have a Maleficent Dragon to drop. Instead, they're going to drop the Maui to take out the Aerial. They have to make sure that it's exerted, but I don't think it really matters too much. They're going to go ahead now and play out their freshly drawn hand, playing out a Popsicle, inking a Hiram. So not having to worry about Maleficent Dragon here is really nice because my Tamatoa is going to be able to get some value on the next turn, being able to quest. But without a dime on field, it's just really difficult to basically come back from the situation. So you can see here they use dime on their Sisu. They're going to quest with it, and I think this puts them to like 11 or 12. And yes, this Tamatoa on my side is going to quest for like 7 or 8, but I don't think I have any items. So this is another important thing to kind of keep track of when you're using Tamatoa in real life. Just make sure you are always checking your discard pile for your items and popping your Popsicles, hopefully not your Fortisphere because it does cost 1 to use Fortisphere, but ideally you just want to pop a Popsicle, target Tamatoa so it doesn't heal anything really, and then quest with the Tamatoa. Yes, you get 1 less lore, but you get the item back, which represents card draw. So it looks like what I wheeled into wasn't too beneficial. I have to be able to deal with that Sisu and that Hiram potentially, but maybe at this point, which is also a viable line of play, you can opt to let them keep their Hiram and go for a deck out if you don't end up clunking up your hand with multiple Whole New Worlds at the same time, and you know that you can draw into more Whole New Worlds. Decking them out is a viable strategy. Now, in-person play, when you're maybe at a set championship or at a Lorcana challenge, this is something you really need to pay attention to and really ask your opponent about. In this scenario, because we're on webcam, I'm not going to ask my opponent to count their deck or anything right now, but it was a misplay by me because you're going to see probably in the thumbnail of this title or something, I said, winning by deck out or something like that, because that is a legitimate option. You can see that since the opponent dropped this Hiram, I just let it stay on board, which you could argue is a misplay. I should have been able to deal with this, but I'm valuing a little bit more of the control aspect of Steel. So you can see me drop this Beast here on the previous turn to out the Lucky Dime, knowing full well they're going to Tamatoa bring it back, but just the tempo swing from dropping the Beast hard-headed here in order to out the Lucky Dime is enough for me to slow down my opponent, because it means they can't drop Tamatoa, use Dime, and then quest Tamatoa next turn, use Dime again, right? So that is where there are some benefits here in just slowing your opponent down, even though I know that the opponent is still going to kind of pop off. They're going to get their game plan going. They have their Hiram draw engine. And if you let Sapphire, Ruby continually draw, this is how this deck becomes basically the best deck in the game, right? Like if the draw can outpace the discard for the Emerald decks, if the draw can outpace the Sapphire Steel advantage with the Whole New World, you should be in a losing position 100% of the time, because the Ruby top end is just too strong. I've said this many times before. So they're going to go ahead and play out a Popsicle. They got a ton of ink. And then they're going to just wipe the board with Be Prepared. Now, the opponent does have a full grip. They have 6 or 7 cards in hand still. And they have 3 ink left available. But, yeah, here, then this is another point to make. And I left this in for a certain reason. He attempted to ink again. And I think I caught that he inked a Brawl at the start of the turn. And this is why you see in the Lorcana challenges, people leave their cards face up until the end of the turn so that they remember that they inked. If you actually go back, I think he did ink at the start of the turn here. But going back to my opponent's play and wiping the board on the Be Prepared, he does clear out my Smee and my Beast Hard-Headed, so that's 4 lore that he couldn't interact with because they were readied, I guess. He didn't have Maleficent Dragon that he wanted to drop, and he wanted to be able to deal with the Tamatoa as well. So he wiped the whole board. The Hiram has gotten him enough draw at this point where he probably has enough gas in his hand. But he was probably thinking in this scenario, it's worth it to do a board reset because next turn he can do the Tamatoa Dime follow-up and clutch out the game from there, because I still haven't seen a Dime despite me Whole New Worlding I think twice, or this is the second time maybe. So I end up discarding a Tamatoa. You can see here he kind of met he during this moment he's like, maybe I should have double dropped the Maui, because he had a Maui on board already when he Be Prepared, and just use the second Maui in his hand and take out the Tamatoa that way instead of Be Preparing. But then my other 2 characters would have been on board still in the readied state. So it's a really difficult thing to kind of determine. If you're at this point in the video with me, let me know in the comment section below. What would have you done given, go back and look at his hand and go back and look at the game state that we were in when he be prepared. What would you have done in that situation? Because I don't even know. I haven't sat there and thought through all the best lines on what's optimal. But at this point, you can see on my opponent's side, his deck is kind of off the screen a little bit. I mean, my deck is also a little off screen, but he's on almost no cards left. And knowing this position here, yeah, he's going to have to slow me down a little bit. So he's going to go ahead and Maleficent Dragon away the Tamatoa after I quested for like 9 there or something, right? Because look at all my items on board. He's got triple Popsicle, but he's not going to be able to follow up with another Tamatoa here, which is going to be good because it's going to slow him down a little bit. But we're both on like 15 ink at this point, or 16 ink, which is crazy. And we're both in the range of, well, at least I am because I have Fishbone Quill. I can ink and do the dime drop, or sorry, I can do, yeah, Tamatoa, dime drop, and use the dime. But it's not going to be enough to win the game at this moment in time. So we're going to go ahead and continue to ink. I left the card on board in my hand by accident there. And again, I just can't find what I need, it looks like. So I have to play this Hiram and draw 2. Now, the opponent has definitely drawn more of their deck than I have. So again, this is a scenario where if I had another Whole New World in my hand, I might ask the opponent to count his deck, because maybe just hard casting a Whole New World here is enough. But instead, you see me go for double grab your sword. So I see my removal very late in the game here. Ink a Cogsworth and then cast a Baboom to finish off the Maleficent Dragon. Because again, I know the opponent, I think they're on 12 lore there. And if they see a Tamatoa and are able to get back the dime, that represents 2 turns or 2-turn clock for me basically. Because they play Tamatoa, they bring back dime, they play dime, they activate dime. Because they have enough ink, I think, to do that at this point. Literally 17 ink. And then that's 4 lore, bringing them to 16. Here you can see that's exactly what's going to be happening. And then if I can't out the Tamatoa or the dime the next turn, well, even if I out the dime, they can just bring it back with Tamatoa again, since they've already paid the cost to play Tamatoa. So a lot of intricacies here. All they need to do is quest with the Tamatoa if I can't out it, and then dime it for game next turn as well. So here, I actually think that maybe they didn't activate dime. So again, just showing you how beneficial keeping a Fishbone Quill on board is. But next turn, they're going to be able to dime and quest, which is going to be game anyway. So whether or not they dime the last turn, I guess, is inconsequential, unless I can out the Tamatoa and they don't have another one. So you can see me here, quest with the Hiram, draw 2. And again, you can argue you should quest first, draw 2 before you ink or anything, which is technically correct. But these little sequencing things at this point in the game, yes, they matter, but they're not. They likely won't be too impactful, because I probably Fishbone Quilled like a 1 jump ahead or something. We're going to play Beast Heart Headed to out the Lucky Dime, which again you can argue is a mistake, but at this point I know that I have no way to win the game because I can't out the Tamatoa, and next turn he just quests with Tamatoa, brings back dime. Would go to 19 actually. Oh no, sorry, no, because the quest is 4 lore, so he'd go to 16 and then bring back dime, play dime, use dime. He would be able to go to 21 lore. So yeah, he has game on board, and knowing that, thinking through like, yeah, I don't think there's any way I can come back, I just end up conceding here. So in a best of 2, my opponent ends up taking game number 2 on the play, and it's a 1-1 series, but maybe I misplayed, maybe he misplayed. Let me know in the comment section below if you've made it this far what you think. Thank you again for watching though. Quantum is out.